Thank you, guys. Healthy habits is a topic that we talk about a lot in both our upper and lower school. I'm able to go into the classroom, and I actually have already been in the classroom this year talking about healthy habits, and it's such a broad spectrum. So, we're new into 2020. How many of you set a New Year's resolution or set some new goals for yourself for this year? Okay, a couple of you guys. When we are looking at those healthy habits or those resolutions, they tend to be around healthy habits. So maybe exercising more, eat healthy. Maybe it's going to be to read your Bible every day or save more money, potentially stopping a bad habit. But how many of us reflect on boundaries, on our healthy habits around boundaries? A lot of people struggle with boundaries. And when I actually mentioned to some of our staff that this is a topic I was talking about, they all were like, this is an area we need, because boundaries are really tough. When we think about those healthy habits, we're good at some of them, right? We brush our teeth twice a day. We drink the amount of water. We, eat our vegetables at night. But we don't know how to say no. And the stress of the lack of boundaries that we have actually can cause more damage than forgetting to eat your broccoli. And we're the role models our children look to. We are the ones that are reflecting what we want them to learn. So how we understand healthy habits around boundaries is going to help our children. So what is a boundary? A boundary is a space between you and another person. How close are you going to allow that person to be, both physically and emotionally? Your dreams, your health, career, and even your sanity can be potentially sacrificed when you give too much of yourself to others and not enough for yourself. Putting up boundaries does not mean that you don't like someone or that you don't care about them, but it's about respecting another enough to expect respect. I'm going to say that again because it's a little bit much there. It's about respecting another enough to expect respect. Now I'm going to focus on us as adults. And you're going to pause throughout this and maybe think about your children and the areas they need to grow on. But what I want you to do is focus first on what you might need to address, and then share with your children areas you might need to change so that you can influence that within them. To begin, it is important that we take time to step back and have time where we are unavailable. It seems odd and even uncomfortable at first, especially in 2021, but God needs us to be refreshed. He needs us to take that time for ourselves. And remember, even Jesus took time apart from his followers to spend time alone with his Father. So you have to take time where you are away from your devices, turn them off. Maybe it looks different. For you, it might look like journaling, reading your Bible, spending time in prayer. Maybe you're one of those people that looks like going for a walk or a run. Bless you. But the bottom line is that it's something that allows you, when you're done, to feel refreshed. It's also important that we take time to reflect on what's really important to us and what matters for our values, and then to compare them to what's influencing us. So does Facebook and the influence of Facebook news match your values? Is CNN playing on the background helping you grow? Are your friends encouraging you and building you up? 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals." And I'm not saying that Facebook and your news and your friends are all bad, but we do need to consider the influence they provide and how that impacts the way that you see the world. So we want to ensure that we're feeding ourselves what matches our values. The same comes when we consider movies, music, video games that we're around. The world does overstep into our lives, so we need to be aware of that. It's also important that we do prioritize our health. I know I mentioned boundaries are more than those healthy habits, but we need to have boundaries around our healthy habits. And we might think we're really great at multitasking this, but remember, we do need to prioritize that. If we don't get enough sleep, water, exercise, and healthy food, we're not going to be healthy enough to take care of the other priorities in our life. And it's really easy, as parents especially, to make excuses as to why these cannot be the top thing or why these are not priorities. But studies do show that those who don't care for themselves in these simple habits actually are more susceptible to viruses. And Hey, in this world, we don't want to be susceptible to that, right? So it is important that we look at that. So how I've made this in my life, one of my things that I value is my me time. When my son goes to bed, what it used to look like is me sitting in my favorite lazy boy. It's so comfortable. I'd put on my favorite show, which is just entertaining and it helps me just turn off my brain for a little bit. And then I would indulge in my delicious bag of chips. It was great, but it wasn't meeting those healthy habits, right? So what I've had to change that to look like is I had to buy an exercise bike so that I start my me time after my son goes to bed on that bike. I'm still watching my favorite show because that's part of that. But then when I'm done, I like to reward myself with tea so that I'm getting something still delicious, filling, warm, but it meets those healthy habits without sacrificing that value of my me time. Another, and maybe the most uncomfortable part of healthy habits is saying no. Raise your hand if you have ever struggled in your life with saying no. I'm pretty sure most of you would raise your hand. This is an area that we really do struggle with because we want to help, right? And especially as Christians, we feel like, we have to help everyone. It's what we're called to do. But it's important that we consider if by helping someone else, we could be potentially harming ourselves or our families. Galatians 6:5 says, "For each will have to bear his own load." Note that the Bible does not say that you have to bear everyone's load so that they feel light. So what you need to do is step back, and when you're in a situation where you have a yes or no option, think about these 4 areas. Does your time take away from something important to you? Does your effort feel unhealthy? Does someone manipulate or expect too much of you? And is the other party using you or not appreciating your effort? By taking time to think through those 4 areas and deciding your yeses or nos, you're setting up your boundaries and you're allowing yourself to be in control of the answer. Now, as you're working on setting boundaries, it's important to distinguish that no is to an action or a project. It's not to that relationship. You shouldn't feel shame for saying no if there's something important that is needing that no. If someone is responding in a way that makes you feel shame, it's time to evaluate how your relationship is formed. Boundaries are very important within your relationships. And if you're recognizing that maybe there's a relationship, or maybe even a few, that your boundaries need a reset, it's time to do that. Take a reset so your relationship can be healthy again. So I just went through a lot of different areas within boundaries. And maybe you are recognizing, yep, I need a reset on a few of these. So I have just a few steps that you guys can consider when having a reset in boundaries. First, you need to know what your limits are. Write them down, no judgment. Don't compare them to anyone else, just write down your limits. Second, you need to set your boundary before you hit your limit. For example, if you're an introvert, I'm not, so this might be extreme. 3 nights out per week for social engagement might be your limit as an introvert. So for your boundary, you would set that at 2 nights out per week, so you avoid hitting your limit and feeling overwhelmed. Third, you need to practice enforcing your boundaries. If you know you're going to be facing a situation where you need to say no, or you need to advocate for your time, take time to practice what you'll say so you feel prepared for that conversation. Fourth, enlist a buddy. We are made to support one another. Even 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, "Therefore encourage one another and build each other up." Find someone who can help remind and encourage you to keep your boundaries in place. And fifth, forgive yourself. Like any new habit, you're going to make a mistake. And it doesn't mean that I'm no good at boundaries. It means, okay, I need to reset and try that again. When I'm working with a student that struggles with boundaries, we start with simple steps to begin this change. It is not reasonable to expect yourself to completely change the way that you've done it in one day. So instead, you need to start small. If you're always buying lunch for your friends, or you're always giving up your time to help someone, you might start with, I'm going to buy 1 lunch for 1 friend this week. Or I'm only going to help and be available for projects on Saturday. Once you begin your small changes, it's easier to build your boundaries. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, you may have thought about your children. They may be struggling with saying no, or another area within this. Take this as an opportunity to role model. If many of you have children, you may not know anything, right? Or you definitely don't understand where they're coming from. We hear this quite often as parents. And I don't know, I've never been a teenager in 2021, but we do need a role model and not just talk. Show how you're making changes. Share with them the areas that you're growing in. It's important to remember that it doesn't make us look weak when we share what we're struggling or what we're working through. Instead, it normalizes that we all have room to grow. Thank you.